Hello, welcome back. Today we're going to take a look at this old LCII external SCSI enclosure. It's a really neat little bit of kit. I really like it. I got it with a failed drive originally, and it's a neat little thing. Obviously, getting hold of SCSI drives, yeah, I mean they work, they're noisy, they use a lot of power, and they're starting to become a bit unreliable. But this one, it has a bit of a secret. So if I take this top off, working on this thing, and yeah, it's unusual. It is modern tech. So it has a micro SD card onto the 50-way SCSI adapter, and it's picking up power from the power supply that's included in the unit. It's all very neat. I need to find a nice way of mounting it. At the moment I've got this there to stop it shorting out. So this unit takes the standard power. It's got a little adapter there from the MOLEX connector, and there's an 8 gig SD card in there that's been petitioned down. Originally I got this for my Apple Mac LCII. Let me just describe this. So anyway, the idea was I was going to run the LCII with the internal 80 meg hard drive, and that's all fine. I replaced it with this thing because thinking, oh, that's going to be nice, and it's a little twitchy with this running internally. I'm not quite sure why. Anyway, this card is formatted with a couple of petitions. There's an 80 meg or 80 or 90 meg boot petition, and then a secondary volume with a whole load of software on it. It's running OS 7, but what I wanted to do is just quickly test it to make sure it worked. Now, in my Frankenstein SCSI monster, I have this set up with this 25-pin SCSI cable, so it goes onto there. Obviously it's got the larger one, so that's probably what it's going to use on the Mac. I don't know yet, it depends. I'm not looking at the drive identifier wheel or any of that stuff. That's all been mapped out. I don't have the activity LED rigged up. That's this one here. I'll do that at some point. I'm not quite sure what the pinout is on it. But anyway, so if we fire this up and we use cider press, I can show you what I'm trying to do. So the first thing you've got to do is switch that one on. That switch was a bit bzz. Okay, so that's started up. Let's start up the PC. And it has this horrible connector on the back, but it works. It's nice to have something that's got a 25-pin SCSI connector on the back of the PC, because it just means that I can plug all sorts of other external SCSI, older SCSI devices in. So yeah, we'll boot that up and I'll show you what it looks like. Right, I'm now booted into Windows 2000 as before. So if I open up computer management, it should have a look at that. So we go to disk management, and we'll get a warning because it talks about drive upgrade. So if I'm not going to do that, so if I cancel that, then you can see here that this on the SD card, even though it's an 8 gig card, it's petitioned down. So that's got a bunch of software on it, and that's a 90 meg boot petition running OS 7. So I can't address this drive because Windows has no clue about it. But if I go to cider press and I open this up, then it will say, so there's the physical disk, that's the IDE boot disk, but then I've got a couple of other petitions. So if I open disk 2, there is the boot petition, which is really quite cool. Alright, if I then do this one, that's the petition that has all of the utility software on, Apple extras and various bits of software and that sort of stuff. And what's great is that using this program you can read and write to that drive, so you can do all this stuff on a modern machine. I say modern in quotes, on a PC which is connected up, and that's all lovely. Bung all your stuff on a micro SD card, shove it into your Mac, or if this is sealed, then you can plug it into a PC, mount it with cider press, and then inject files into the system. It's really quite cool. The next step is to button this up and see if we can boot the Mac LCII using this as an external device, so that's the plan. The other big advantage of that is certain LC machines have a little secret. So this is the original lid. Things got moved around, it all got a bit chaotic, but what you can see here is there's like a space on the side. In actual fact, depending on the version of LC2 board you have, you've got this plate here, this blanking plate, that you can clip off. He says, trying to balance this precariously. So that should come off. Right, so that's the metal retainer, and then this bit comes off. Right, so you've now got two slots on the front for two floppy drives. So if you have an LC motherboard with this additional floppy header there, then you can have a second drive. And I've ended up with loads of these. I'm quite sure they seem to be breeding. I didn't think I had that many, but I've got a few of those. So the idea is to mount a secondary floppy drive in there, because this internal SCSI connector, it works on some drives internally. On this it's a bit twitchy. But I think it'd be really cool to have an LC with twin floppies. So when it's all done, it's going to look like that, and you've got drive A, well, the equivalent of drive A, drive B. So let's see if we can fire this up using the external SCSI drive. This thing fired up, so with all things retro and SCSI, you really should power up the SCSI first. So that's that switched on. Not much to see there, and then I'm going to switch on the Mac. Eventually, hopefully there'll be a chime, or not. Is that on? Oh, there we go. That took a while. Okay. Right, let's have a look at the screen. Not much to see there. So we'll see. So it is starting up. So it's starting up over 7, which is cool. I think there's some problem with the secondary petition. It's when I tested it earlier, it's also asking about this to initialize it. I'm not going to do that at the moment. I'm not quite sure what's happening, but as you can see, it's loading up from an external device, which is really cool. So that's the 90 meg volume on the SD card. So there is, I mean, it's only using 3 meg, so there's 90 meg on a LC2. I mean, there's loads. So yeah, so this thing's got 6 gig memory. There's no battery in there, backup battery. So if you have anything, startup state wise, well, that's going to be cleared. But hey, that's all working, which is really cool. I just had a thought though, that at the moment if I shut this down and switch it off, I'm wondering whether I could actually boot this without the power on the SCSI controller. So let's turn that off, because that power supply only provides, I think the power supply is really, it provides obviously 12 volts and 5 volts. So 5 volt logic and 12 volt to power the drive motors, but there is power from the SCSI port. So I wonder whether I could boot the thing without actually, because the light comes on, I noticed. I'm not sure you can see that, but anyway, the light is on the SCSI circuit board with a little microcontroller on it. It does seem to be working. In theory, it should actually boot without the power supply switched on the external SCSI controller, because the amount of power usage is minimal, because it's a tiny little circuit board. You wouldn't be able to power a spinning disc. I mean, you wouldn't have the voltages anyway. But I'm just having a thought. Yeah, it does actually work. So there we go. So you can boot the thing without it switched on. So that's really cool. I like that. Nice. So yeah, I'm gonna have to figure out what's going on with this. I might just initialize it. Do I initialize it? Not sure. Well, what's the worst that could happen? Let's initialize it anyway. and see what it says. So we'll call it dump. So in theory that should be I'm not sure what it's going to think of a 2 gig petition. It might not like that. Let's see if it works. Doing something. Oh, there you go, dump. Interesting. So presumably that's going to be a blank volume. It is. Wow, that actually works. Let's get the information on that one. Ah, okay, so it's seen it as a what? So there's 236k used on the disk. That's just for the directories and all that other stuff. Mac dumps a bunch of things on there anyway. So in theory that's working, which is kind of cool. Let's see if we can copy some files off onto that. So let's just. It's not going to move. It's going to copy it, right? It's not going to move it. Yeah, there we go. Okay, there we go. Brilliant. So we got both petitions there. That's interesting. So now this is fully initialized. Presumably then we can unplug the micro SD card and start dicking around and putting files on and the rest of it, because you know this LCII, I don't have the Ethernet on there, which is annoying, so it's kind of tricky. It does support DOS disks at 7.2 because it's the high density drive, but yeah, that's tricky. Getting the format right can be a pain, but I think that's really cool. So we've got a external SCSI boot, which is nice. So I can use that as like a scratch disk if I wanted to do reinstalls and things like that. Next step would be to button this up, but also get the floppy drive in there. So we'll have a twin floppy LCII with an external SD boot. That's really nice. So that's worked out really quite well. I'm very keen with these little modules. So this little BLUESCSI device is pretty cheap. Obviously SD cards, I mean, they are pence and you can get loads of them. So in theory you could have different machines configured in different operating systems, all that kind of stuff. It just works really well. So I'm hoping that my LCII will live again now with an external device I can swap out and have different configurations, application development, games, whatever it is. And yeah, so get yourself one of these. They're really cool. See you next time. Cheers.